All right, I am back with Sonia Scorsone. Hey, Sonia.
Hey, how are you doing, Jen?
Good. Hey, thanks for coming back. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Good to be here.
Yes, you are with United out of Lexington, Kentucky.
That's right.
And you are going to answer this number one question I feel like we get asked all the time. So, what do I say to a seller for an update if nothing's happened? I have no update.
Okay.
What are our tips?
Well, first of all, seller communication is huge. It's so important to have that relationship with them. And just like any good relationship, communication is key, right? So whether it's good news or bad news, it's very important to stay in touch. And
I think that is like for a mindset shift, right? It's like, because at some point you're going to have to communicate with them, right? And if the house doesn't sell, you're going to have to talk about like a price reduction or a change in strategy or something like that. So having this communication, like just having communication in general regularly, it takes the drama out of the communication, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's what makes, or part of what makes a good agent is that communication, because you're showing that seller that you are trying to achieve their goals.
Right.
Your goal is to achieve their goals. So
exactly.
You do that by letting them know, what's happening in the marketplace week to week.
Right.
And, in this fast market that we've had right now, things are happening even faster. Right. So you want to make sure that that seller knows the next steps, is comfortable with the process and what's happening day to day, as sometimes that's happening right now, right?
Right. What's the minimum, let's say we're in like a regular market, what do you recommend for a frequency of communication?
My rule of thumb is I let my sellers know that at least once a week, they're always going to hear from me.
Okay.
More often, if certain things come up that I need to definitely get in touch with them about.
But like at a minimum.
At a minimum, once a week. And of course, if they ever need anything, to always communicate with me. I mean, it doesn't have to be that once a week only. It's all the time.
Right. You can only talk to me on Tuesdays at 2. Yeah.
And I also feel it's important to set up front, what kind of communication style they want. Do they want phone calls? Do they want text? Do they want emails? Or all of the above, so.
That's funny. You're team Monica on that. I go by like whatever I want to do. You know what I mean? But I think like a voice to voice once a week is like kind of the minimum standard, because there's some, like, depending on what I'm communicating with them, there's a medium that makes the most sense. Yeah. And I don't know.
I can see that. I mean, that, and everybody has their own style. Every agent has their own style of doing it.
Right.
I just feel that, if we at least know what their preferences are, and if they have situations, for instance, if they have a crazy work schedule and they can't talk, if you'd rather talk on the phone, but they can at least text, it's whatever you can coordinate with them to work out best.
Exactly.
I think is at least important to know.
No, I mean, you're right. I just, So what are what are our tips for?
Well, I feel when we communicate with our clients, we definitely need to let them know what's happening. Yeah. So again, if it's the week to week, if it's that, just upfront, this is what's happening this week. If nothing's happening, if there are no showings, if there are no offers, especially, you need to let them know, one, you haven't fallen off the face of the earth.
Right. You're still working on their house. Exactly. You're still working to market it.
I'm letting you know. Right. Letting you know I'm here and taking a look at what is happening in your market. Right. So you can share with them then, are there new houses on the market? Have things sold, things pending, just to keep them abreast. So they're in the know. And then also see if they have any questions, week to week, there's a lot of information that we give sellers up front.
Right.
And a lot of it gets forgotten as the
Yeah.
listings go along. You know, this is what we do 24/7. That's not what they do.
Exactly.
So it's important to make sure, you know, if they have questions, you're there to answer them for them.
Right.
Yeah. And then again, if it's a market situation where things aren't moving, you need to be able to communicate and say, okay, this strategy that we've put in place is not working. We need to do X, Y, Z.
And that brings up a good point. So like, okay, so there's nothing to tell them. Like there's no offer. There's not been any showings. So just having that conversation of what you just said, hey, look, it's not working. Like they know there's no showings. You know, there's no showings. So just like, and if you don't, in my head, I always think like, if I don't talk to them and tell them like what I'm doing to market and promote the property, they literally think we're doing nothing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And why wouldn't they? Wouldn't know, because we haven't told them what we're doing.
Exactly. Because there is a lot that happens behind the scenes that they do not even see or know about. Right. Whether there is activity or there's not on their property. Right. But letting them know that we don't want to be secret agents, as we say, right?
I find too that if we do like communicate with them, like, and tell me if you agree with this, communicate with them every day for the first 3 days, it like instills that trust, and the trust like grows roots. So then even if you like mess up somewhere down the line, you've built a strong foundation of trust and communication that it'll carry you through the transaction. Those first 3 days are like beyond critical. Do you agree?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting you have the 3-day with your structure. You know, so I again, it goes back to whatever structure an agent puts in place. Just up front from the beginning, keep that communication going. Right. You know, don't just start that listing and disappear.
So let's talk about things that people can communicate. So one is, hey, look, there's been no activity. One could be like we talked about, here's the marketing that we've done on the property and here's the results. Like I put it on a Facebook ad, you know, 40 people saw it or whatever. Do you know what I mean? Like what happened? What else can we do? Like, what else can we tell them if there's like nothing really to say?
Well, you know, definitely market update.
Yeah. Like good. Yeah. So you can set up like a CMA.
Or even if they're not receiving it, but as you're talking, you know, I like to pick up the phone and call a lot of times. Yeah. Especially if nothing's happening. I just prefer to call if possible. If they can communicate with me.
Because they're going to have some thoughts, right? Yeah. Like if nothing is happening, their friends are going to be telling them what ought to be happening.
That's a different story. Yes. but yes, I mean, there's so many questions. There are several that could come up in a conversation about that a seller may have. And I want to be able to answer those questions. And so, you know, and up front, because again, if there are concerns that a seller have and they don't get answered in a certain amount of time and it delays, I think that anxiety in the seller grows as it would with anybody, you know. Of course. And so the faster we can get to their needs and answer any reservations they have, the easier everything will go moving forward.
Yeah. I agree.
So timing, I think timing is very important.
Yeah, because like one day in a seller's mind is really, it's like one day in reality is like 10 months in a seller's mind, you know? Yeah. You're right. That anxiety does grow. And if you're getting anxious, they're 10 times more anxious.
Right. Yeah. And I think the important thing for an agent to remember in trying to stay in touch with their clients is, again, if you're a full-time agent and you're doing this all the time, the ups and downs you're used to, and you know how to maneuver them. Right. These folks aren't used to that necessarily. And helping them through that, you know, holding those hands is very important.
It's critical.
The whole process. Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, I think I was thinking, yeah, so like CMA, asking them, like you could even ask, like if they don't have any questions, you can try to think about what they want to know, or what are their friends telling them. And you could even say, hey, look, a lot of people ask this question, if that's something you were wondering. You can do that.
Yeah.
Or like, yeah. I mean,
I
just start answering those questions before they're even asked.
Well, and I think the reason I focus a lot on strategy is because I think part of the role of an agent needs to be forward thinking.
Yeah.
You know, you're not just, the goal is not to be reactive, but to be proactive.
Exactly.
Right. So And that's why they're hiring us, to prepare for all possibilities and help them through that to get to their end goal.
Right.
So, you know, if you're talking strategy with them, okay, this isn't working, but this is what I've been thinking about, or this is what I see we need to do next.
Yes.
You know, and put those steps in place.
Mm-hmm.
I think that helps a lot.
I agree too. And just, having like, it's hard to stress to people how important communication is, but like once you do it, you'll realize like how much better much calmer everybody is.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. Just, I always say, you know, it's part of being a good agent, good communication, right? Just like any good relationship. Right?
And you're just speaking, you can't hide. Like they know you're there, and they've hired you to do a job, and so you gotta figure out how to get it done.
Yeah, and you know, when there's bad news to say, or, you know, if something comes up and it's not how anybody wanted it to go, or there are no offers at the time, you know, whatever that market is bringing and situation is bringing, that agent is supposed to be the barrier. They're supposed to be, you know, take in sponge, that sponge, right? Take in that news and be able to relay it to the seller. Mm-hmm. And help them through whatever that situation is.
Well, and I find too, like when you are communicating frequently and everybody feels like they're moving, like you said, on the same goal, if you have to reduce the price, it will actually be obvious, and oftentimes they will bring it up. And it's not this, a lot of agents get so crazed about these like price reduction conversations. Well, not now, but like before, right? And it will happen again. That you don't actually, it's not really a conversation. It's just a natural part of the strategy, right? And it's like, okay, this is what we've been doing this whole time. Like, and you're telling them every time, and they know, and they feel part of the process. And it's like, okay, it's not working at this point. It makes sense to open up the market. And you do that by reducing the price, you know, improving the price, or whatever you want to call it.
Exactly. And that's another great conversation to have up front as well. Right. That is part of, you know, the strategy that you might put in place. Yeah. So that way it doesn't come as a shock to them. Oh, right, exactly. Oh my God. Why are you reducing my price? You know, so all that. I think that one of the important things is that communication up front of all aspects of what could happen. Mm-hmm. That just puts them, you know, at ease and knowing certain obstacles can come up. Yeah. But we'll take care of it together. So
that's awesome. These are really good tips. And I hope people like found encouragement from this, of like, and ideas of what they can share if they feel like maybe there's nothing to share. They can implement like some of these strategies. I appreciate you being on, Sonia. Thank you so much.
It's great to see you. Thank you.
And if people have a referral for you in Lexington, or they have a question about this video, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, my cell phone is 859-433-5024, or they can email me at Sonia, SONIA, at scorsonegroup.com. That's SCORSONE group.com.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. Have a good one.
You too. Thanks.